I want to begin this service by talking about an event that took place some 2,000 years ago when our Lord Christ stood on the edge of the Sea of Galilee with his disciples and looked across the shoreline and said, "Brothers, let's get a ship and go across." And so they did. And immediately Jesus laid down to go to sleep and did so. When all of a sudden a great storm bellowed around and waves were crashing in, filling the boat with water, you can imagine the disciples, afraid for their life, waking up, "Jesus, Master, Master, we are going to drown." And our Lord Christ then stood up in that boat. And here's a beautiful rendition from Rembrandt of that as the waves were crashing down and we can feel that moment. But when Lord Christ stood up in that boat, he rebuked the wind and the raging waters in command. And the storm subsided, and all was calm. And so then he asked his disciples, "Where is your faith?" And to me, it's an ageless, profound moment that Christ is asking each of us today. Is it in the storm to destroy you, or in God to save you? No matter what we are going through in life, we are here in this existence to grow, which causes changes to take place in our life, which invite us to shift in consciousness or in our efforts. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, isn't it? But every time we get that shifting and that call, Christ is asking us, where is your faith? Is it in the change to break us, or in God to make us? Well, all of us are coming off this very interesting time. 10 weeks we've been sheltering at home. We didn't have 10 services live in this church other than the pre-recorded ones from Flower, and weren't they wonderful? It was kind of like getting back to our roots as a ministry and hearing Flower directly. But we've been sheltering at home. We've been dealing with the news every day of the deaths piling up and the spread and the threats of having to be locked down in Ignatium. We've had this week, a tremendous week, from watching the senseless killing of George Floyd, of seeing protests begin not only around the United States but around the globe, and violence even erupting at times, and these great fear in a sense of society. I mean, it was like a coming together this week of all the different calamities, pandemic, civil unrest. And where is that unity we seek? Well, ultimately, if we can kind of put our consciousness beyond the politics, perhaps involved in any of these things, beyond the emotions that these things trigger, but rather seeing it from God's perspective from lifetime upon lifetime. We made it through the Middle Ages, everyone. And we start realizing that this is a journey humanity is on, and really all life, of becoming greater expressions of God. Beyond racism, beyond fear, beyond violence. But do you think we're going to avoid those things to show that we're beyond them? Or are we going to be faced with them and prove through activity that we are beyond them? So each of us, in our own human development Godward, needs to rise out of the ashes of our lower nature, that instinctive desirable responses. And this is the journey to mastery, to be self-emptied and God-filled. We know this. And as I was pondering it this week, it was harder, particularly seeing the impact of everything, and I realized, now this is our time to be more and more under the influence of our soul and respond to it, responsive to our soul. And then I was reminded that Flower called the soul self within us our Christ self. And I think that has a double meaning. I think I've always understood it kind of as the future master budding in each of us, right? So it was always something there that I will live from someday. Wonderful. But I came to a new understanding that it is where the Christ Spirit can bring God's power right into our being and kind of ray it out. That's our kind of like the sending station or the connecting station of our vehicles, down to the lower and then up to the God indwelling within us. So today, we have to realize when we're asking ourselves, where's our faith? Is it in the storm to destroy us? Which are emotions and thoughts. Oh boy, they get all riled up during this time. And you can feel our emotional bodies. It's almost like the tail wagging the dog, right? It's starting to take over our thoughts and create judgments in our thoughts, opinions. You can feel it coming up from the lower. Or are we going to be listening to the soul? And as I was pondering that, I was realizing that it's oftentimes where we are identifying ourselves. We are placing our attention. So when we are faced with that storm, are we looking right into the winds? Or are we looking to the heaven and the rays of light that are all coming through if we but look?